Hi, Mary.
Hi, this is Karen. Yeah, I'll be right back.
As it will save you from having to scribe and capture what's going on. The facilitator is going to capture the data and be able to report back to the group at large in a time-effective manner. That's the only reason we've got that there. They are not guiding you on your decision-making process with this. So facilitator-wise, I'm going to assign.
I think we're all set.
We're set? You got it. You know, okay. So I'm going to let you choose your group that you would want to. For those of you who are physically in this room here, for those of you who are online, I'm trusting my tech helpers in the back to put you in a group. That'll be a part of it. If I see that we're weighted too heavily one area, I'm going to go to that group and ask you to disperse a little bit. So,
John, would it be fair to just kind of give a very rough overview of what these 4 groups are about?
yes, if you want to pick it up, Woody, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking.
What I'm saying is that what we have over here is ECL regional capacity expansion. So this is about, supporting providers of early care and learning services. So we've got employers sponsoring on-site childcare as potential solution pathways, employers subsidizing childcare, cooperative childcare centers using volunteer parents, all about sort of building out the number and the strength of providers. Over here, we have workforce expansion, which is really about ways to bring people in and then support them while they work in early care learning. Over here, we have ECL provider sustainability, which is new ways to kind of mix up the business model of what it is to operate an early care and learning center. So this could be, unique partnerships, new sources of ways of kind of supporting that overall business model so that ECL providers can succeed once we've built out the capacity. And then the final is the overall system support that is necessary. And that's going to be things like public awareness and support. It's going to be about, again, kind of different funding models that can kind of feed into all of this. So that's the general flavor of what these 4 areas are that we're going to have people talk about.
Okay, thank you, Woody. All right, is that clear? Are you guys ready to move and break out into your groups? All right, I'll give you about 3 minutes to settle into groups, and then I'll set the tone for the 2 minutes to pick your one thing, and then we'll move into group discussion. 2 computers in the seat area are set up to just so. Yep.
That's a tricky one. I was just thinking we were not full.
Oh, man, a really good conversation. Yeah, right.
I'm here. Yeah.
I think getting up is probably. So it's over to be.
I was looking for your low. Just make that. It might. You're home.
So it's clear you're looking at this list. You want 4. You don't like any. What might
They've given me a master facilitation where I have a present. If we always.
find out why it has to be more like there's one.
That's for everybody to send. Okay. Or you don't have to send. Read over the actions. What is the most important?
Hello, group. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, either with your reactions or with, okay, Sarna, awesome, thank you. Brittany, okay, wonderful. All right, so I just needed to take my mask off so I could see and hear and talk to you guys. So we are going to, the technology is not working as planned, COVID again, but what we're going to do is take a photo and get it up on the screen here for you to see what's on the wall. And then we're all going to be part of the same group. I'm going to have Jonathan come out and repeat the directions for you. And we will get what's on the wall on your screen momentarily. Does that sound like it makes sense? Okay, great. And they can hear me. Yes, it doesn't sound weird in there. I have everybody here. We're going to be one group right here.
I think that's really, really similar to what.
Yeah, I'm here.
What the Leland Children's Center is doing.
Great.
I think that's a great example. Just give us
Great. Now, they didn't have the benefit of hearing Jonathan say hi
right here.
Yeah, right here.
All right, where?
Thank you.
Greetings, group. Thank you for staying with us as we try and do this from a tech standpoint. So you guys are going to be breakout on your own here, and we have had to pick a category for you to be able to work on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, what was it?
Building
Building
Hey,
overall
Jonathan,
system
can you
support.
hear?
So the instructions
Can you hear
with
me,
this.
Jonathan?
Can you not hear me? Sarah's shaking her head. Something's going on.
If you turn off the main presenter computer and mute it,
I
it's
can't hear
fighting
her,
with
but I'm assuming the microphone is not
Oh,
on
wait,
this
hold
machine.
on.
Oh my God. Okay, let's try that.
Okay, Sarna, I'm going to focus on you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
I
okay.
just
All right,
tapped
group,
it.
restart. So your small group breakout, are you?
But they don't have childcare for their own children.
No.
I'm gonna take this up so you can read my face.
We can do standing up.
Which one are you? Okay, you guys are gonna focus on building overall system capacity, which is one category. It has multiple solution pathways identified underneath it. Your assignment as a group is to be able to, Sarna's saying, no, you guys can't hear me. I can't hear you without you on mute. Just Sarna, unmute.
Look at the chat. Look at the chat. Look at the chat.
Use the main presenter computer.
Okay, thanks, Sarna. How do we do that? Okay, bear with us just a second.
So like, for example, my husband, I don't know if this is.
I've had parents that can't have it,
Like, it's unrealistic to think that you can open a child center.
can I bring my kid with me? No,
And our
Did that mute it?
Jonathan,
group?
try now.
Okay, give me a thumbs up. All right, group. We'll try again. So thanks for bearing with us. As a small group, you are going to work on the category that is, which is our category? Missy, I
Building
can't-
overall system.
Building
support.
overall system support. Missy's going to post up some images that the rest of the group has the ability to see. You will see that there is a list of possible solution pathways underneath it. What I want you to do individually for 1 minute is to look at that and select the one solution pathway that you feel will have the biggest impact. So it's polarizing for a reason. You've got to select one. After you've done that, 1 minute, I'm going to have then as a group, you're going to work together towards sharing which you picked for your one. So you'll need to be really time effective to be able to share it, share that one solution, and then look for, is there consensus? Are there several that are standing out? And what I want you to do as a group is to be able to identify the one solution pathway that we can do. It's polarizing for a reason. I want you to think and wrestle with what that one thing could be. Missy's about to put the images up here for you.
Zip in. We're so patient and flexible, aren't we, everybody? Give yourself a pat on the back. All right. Okay. All right. Oops. Come back in. This one. Let's see. I gotta get this. You're gonna see a black screen and just, oh, we've got image issues. I'm gonna stop my share because it doesn't like my image. So We're back.
Oh, man.
I've got what happened to good old JPEGs, everybody? Anyone else missing the good old JPEGs? I'm getting these different file types. Hang on. This happened to me a little bit earlier, but we're gonna. No.
Can you drag? They don't drag
I
and drop.
can't because they're HEIC files.
Oh, you're kidding.
in the
Okay.
butt.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna be any help.
Okay. How about a bio break, everybody? We're gonna take 2 minutes and just get this tech figured out. If you need to stretch or get a coffee or something, we'll be back in 2 minutes. So just pause your video and we'll be back in about.
Do you want me to just drop an easel pad that's gonna sit here on the wall?
No, that's okay. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, Ashley. I was just calling you and then somebody came to the door at the same time, so I let that person in. But I wanted to let you know this morning, Brooke.
Who would help. Chris was our archetype new provider who didn't know anything. And he had all the questions about what, can I have kids in my basement? It was really basic. And as we met the needs that he was presenting, the need for mentors or navigators was a very strong idea. We talked also about a backbone organization. So there's tension between what Laura provides, what GSTQ provides. There was an idea about a provider alliance where experienced providers like Allison, if we're in an alliance, could be mentors to others. There was an idea about providers who no longer stayed in business, who could might prefer to be a mentor or a navigator. The idea of sending out a call community-wide to providers who don't know they might like to be a provider yet. To have events in the counties where this backbone organization or the provider alliance identifies people who would be a great provider. Hey, you don't know it yet, but you'd be really good at this. So there was a lot of excitement and it felt like, would you agree in our group that it felt like something we could do? We had something in order. Is there anything I'm missing? Yeah, there's more to say about the particulars of each, but I think the menu, the idea that funding, what did Steve say? There's nothing that money can't solve. So I think, anything I missed? Anybody? There you go. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Emily. All right, Seth. And Seth's group had built overall system support. Can I help you bring that up?
Of course not. I can get it on. I try to talk at the same time.
Okay. All right.
Well, then I just lost one. It's okay.
Okay.
Our group was a fantastic group, a small yet mighty group that took on the big challenge. We had a great dialogue about which one of these would be more of a priority, because even between our somewhat two groups of our in-person and our virtual group, we had a disagreement of what the top one should be. Where the in-person group had this one, where we are looking at the one of the top things we need to do is get non-parents to care about the ECL crisis, and we need to clarify the true cost or the ROI. And then what we had from the virtual group is they actually believe that we need to, now correct me if I'm wrong, virtual group, that we need to increase consistency, reliability of state aid payments to providers as being their top thing. We may have convinced them over time.
Very little time.
Very little time. They were might have been on mute. More of a dialogue than a conversation, but we were able to convince them over time that if we don't get this larger understanding that you are a part of this right, we can't get the rest right. And so that's where our group kind of really came around this. is that without us getting non-parents to care about the ECL crisis, we can't get, increased consistency, reliability of state aid payments for providers. And so when we worked through this, we had our musts and our cans. So our must is that first one, and the second must is expand the support network for parents and providers, right? We didn't get everyone to care about this, but if our providers and our parents are being supported, then how are we going to be able to take this system to the next level? I only have 3 minutes, or I could really riff for a long time on that, but what we came down to our action statement to be, which is that we shall or we will create a public will campaign so that every community member sees themselves as part of the ECL system. Period. That was our group. Did I miss anything? Did I crack enough jokes? Good.
5 stars.
5 stars. Perfect. Thanks. Good. Awesome. Thank you, Seth. All right. Group as a whole. What's it feel like when you hear this? Four different groups. There was your own group that you worked on, but you're hearing the input from the other groups. What's your gut? And I tell you, crickets makes me nervous, right?
I would say clarity.
Clarity? Okay.
Over all the sessions. I mean, right, that they were really big, lots of people, lots of different perspectives and helping to really point in the direction.
Like refining in a way? And does it feel that way? Does it feel uncertain? And the reason I'm asking is, you were a part of one small group, another small group did work elsewhere.
So my lens, when I listened to Seth, seems like that was pretty clear. You guys sounded like you had a clear pathway and of where you wanted to go. And that makes me feel good and relieved and like it's attainable.
Okay. Others? Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question, especially someone kind of coming from the outside into this, is all these things sound great, but who executes them? I don't know if I have clarity on that.
Okay, good question. And that's a part of the work we've been doing for the 3 sessions. We've got disparate stakeholders in this room. How do we act on this?
So it's almost a near perfect setup to what we're going to be doing next.
So, all right, others as well.
I think this exercise helped distinguish like the overarching, action to unlock the different options below it. Because I heard that in a couple different groups. Like, if we don't have this, then none of this stuff is possible.
Okay. We heard Seth say that related to his group.
And Kate said that too.
Okay.
Our group felt that way too.
Okay.
And well, see, there we go.
Awesome. All right. That was the desire of this, that as a group, you would start to look and weigh and say, if not this, we can't this. Where it starts to bring to light, where does the action need to be? Or where could the action be most effective? Thoughts and comments on that, following up what Secure said. So I heard from 3 groups. Is there anyone who doesn't agree? I would like to know if it's like, man, I'm not sure about this, or I don't know about that. Thoughts, comments? Okay. Our next step, the intent is we had you break out into individual groups. We've now heard collectively from this where the small group made their selection. The desire is that we synthesize as a group and we look and say, can we move forward to action? I'm going to move the one sheet over here. So I've got 4 up on here. While I'm doing that, I want you to just spend some time. In essence, what we have, we've got 4 prioritized lists here. We've honed in on one from each of these. There are multiples below that. We still, there's, if I said, segue off of what Chris said and say, great, go do it, right? We haven't served you well. We have to figure out what can we do as we move forward. The desire is that we can look at this. We've taken a whole bunch, narrowed down to 4 key ones. Can we move forward on these? And how would we go about doing that? What do we leverage? I want to spend a small amount of time as the group together being able to do that. So Emily's bringing us over. I'm going to move one of these real quick so we can get them closer together here, Emily. Tonight.
There's a height discrepancy.
All right, help me with the order of these. This one,
Yeah, but.
there.
Oh, there's.
Then one thing.
The others, correct,
Number 3 was the property.
and then the rest are down below. Thank you. Okay, all right. So we've got, and this is gonna document this for those of you online. Thank you for that. So we are, if I build a little bit on what Heidi said, is clarity, a level of refinement. Others have said it's identifying the priorities. If this, if not this, then we can't this. I want the group to be able to reflect on this and say, if we were to move forward, are these actionable and how do we do this? It's Chris's question. It's like, great, these sound great. How do we do this? How do we move this forward? So the questions I want to ask, if we've got these top 4 up here. When you look at it, I'm going to ask a couple of questions we want to identify. If these pass the test with these questions, does this move us towards our vision? So we had the vision shared this morning. Is this a direction that can be pursued? So you've heard me say that multiple times today. Is it actionable? Is it clear enough that we could act on it? If it's not, what do we need to do to make it more actionable? Do we need to break it down in a clear level? Is there a first step that is actionable that we can move forward on? What can we leverage? You've heard us talk about that. What needs to be leveraged? And then who else needs to know and be a part of this? If you guys reflect on that for a second, and then I'm just going to walk through these top 4 and ask those back to you and have you give me a response.
Jonathan, could you read the first?
The first one from each of these?
Yeah, across, yes, the first on all of them, just so we could
Okay.
kind of a cohesive.
All right, thanks, Patricia. So under ECL regional capacity expansion, create connected schools shared services hubs. And this was Woody's group, okay. Prioritize workforce expansion. This one is our group that went rogue. Create a pathway for parents, students, and workers to get subsidized training, degrees, and credentials. And in parentheses, it says from key community members. And this was Emily's group. I'm sorry, Kate's group. Thank you. Build overall system support. And the top one here was get non-parents to care about the ECL crisis. And then the 4th one, ECL provider sustainability, funding and resources to help launch new home-based providers. And that's Emily, and this is Seth. All right.
And to add to Woody's, the last one, the ECL provider sustainability, that actually their number 1 actually tied in very tightly to our discussion of our number 1 in the create connected schools shared services and hubs.
Okay, so you just made an interesting observation. We start to point towards the same thing. When we get great clarity, a mentor of mine had a saying, he said, what must be done becomes self-evident. And we're starting to move towards that. So point that out again. The 2.
So the funding and resources to help launch new home-based providers, that's being done in a micro environment Heidi shared in Leelanau, right? And so we talked a lot about how to create connected schools and shared service hubs. Be sort of a little bit more of a centralized thing helps with channeling the money to people like home providers.
Sure.
That are available in the community, want to do something, but they can't navigate all of the licensures. They don't necessarily know. Mary Manor brought up that there is there are resources that are like the best kept secret at all for Michigan that a hub might be able to connect home-based providers with. And then Chris shared, you know, on a larger, more urban scale, you also have a larger hub that has all sorts of resources that are able to spoke out into the community. It's hopefully I'm sort of sharing what you said. And so that might be, you know, that might be places, it might be more home environments as well. Because that's what meets the needs of people where they're at in the community. Doesn't make sense for a person in, you know, Kingsley who needs to come work at Munson to go drop their kids off and, you know, Elk Rapids. It doesn't make sense, so.
And it also ties in with the workforce expansion, you know, creating a pathway for training and workforce development, because not only do we need home providers, we need center staff and you know, so many other things that support early childhood. So it could all tie together in one idea.
Okay,
I agree with that also. I think that makes it, I mean, you have to have a pathway. The pathway to quality is training and credentialing, and you know, you can't have quality without well-trained people. That's all good.
okay.
And then that does link back to also providing overall support. If y'all don't care, you're not gonna worry about.
The big roll up.
Okay. So now, if I ask, with that shared, is there a singular out of this that touches all of these, that is an actionable, that is, that if we identify, we do this, and there's energy, there's bandwidth, there's the right people and the right players, it starts to impact all of these? Does that stimulate thought?
Who do we have available in the community now that could start to be those hubs? They can start for training and.
She's moving quickly, Jonathan. She's already passed you.
Well, Jonathan, did you guys do a map exercise? Because you mentioned, you know, disparate stakeholders. Oftentimes people don't know what else is out there as a leverageable resource. So how can that be communicated simply so people can quickly understand what they don't know now?
Okay. Wood, did you want to speak to that? You look.
Sure, I do, but I also think that we should rewind and address your point. Yes, we have done some mapping related to actors in the system. Is it clarifying? Not yet. So that's why we have been looking at that as a group, but we've definitely, you know, done an inventory of available services and done some mapping of that. But I was going to go back to Jonathan's question is, does there seem like there's convergence around an idea? And I feel like we're saying, yes, there is. And it's not as if it's the only thing that could help the system, but it is a thing that sort of captures the top of each of these, which is recruiting new home-based providers, supporting them through some kind of centralized hub that can invest in them to make facilities changes, that can give them a pathway to quality that is in the form of training that is supported by broad-based community support. Is that something that would meaningfully improve our ECL system in this region?
Can I make one correction?
Sure.
Recruiting providers.
What did I say?
You said home-based.
Oh.
Not just home-based, but center-based also. Staffing is a huge issue for centers. And so it's recruiting providers across the spectrum of different environments for providing ECL.
Okay.
If I ask Chris this, if I'm understanding this shared service hub, this isn't something that's out there on the internet. This is actually brick and mortar sites that could serve a variety of different purposes. Maybe itself a childcare center, but also house resources necessary to start other centers in the area or have resources for in-home. Is that my understanding?
I'm going to defer to the facilitator for this to make sure that's the intent with this group. So
I don't think it was necessarily brick and mortar. I think that's a legitimate way to handle it. So that's one of the open questions, right? Is what is it? What is done? What does it look like? You know, there's a model presented for Leelanau County where, yeah, there is a physical location, but a lot of the activity is happening outside of that location. And then there's a model which is dependent on a, you know, great, high quality center where, you know, some things can happen, I think. But I don't think that's determined yet.
And I think this is how Leelanau's doing, but I don't really know. Do you do a lot of training for the wider network in the center? Bring in the home providers or whatever for training and expansion?
We don't, but that is kind of the vision of what could be, right? Lots of tensions in there, to do with money typically. But yes, that is that, and on a micro level. So for those of you, you know, Lecty was the fund fiduciary for what happened in Leelanau County. And it was, we felt, to immediately address the capacity issue in Leelanau County. We knew we couldn't do it in the centers because it's expensive. So we went to the home-based providers and we applied for a grant. We received that grant. I can say this now, Patricia, right?
Yes, you can.
Okay, soon to be in a press release, once authorized by the ECIC. So for $318,000, Leelanau County now has a chunk of change to do every single one of one. We just got the one, we got the funding, but Patricia and I just met and like, holy smokes, now what? We had the vision, so it is to create, and it can be nimble and it can be different, and it's a micro level, so it's gonna be different in Benzie. And I'm sorry, the gentleman from Grow Benzie said, boy, they're really specific in Benzie. They want it local. They don't want to hear Traverse City. They want to hear. So it's great to have this micro level, but we also looked at, I still said there's a macro level of scaling up and how nice it would be regionally. Because Patricia and I are just out there having coffee trying to put this together. And it'd be really nice if so at any rate, hopefully that helps. So it is home-based providers, but we're also looking to change and variance licensure to say that it doesn't have to be in the home. Current licensure says it has to be in the home, but we want to then incorporate, well, okay, what if somebody donated space? What if, right? What if, and how do we then tie all of these things together that it could be in a church, it could be in a Haggerty Center. Right, all of those components come in.
Well, to speak to what you said, our conversation said we also have a very varied demographic. We have Traverse City, more urban, not quite as urban as Detroit and Grand Rapids, but more urban than Northport, Frankfurt, like, you know, these little, you know, middle of Leelanau County and the orchards. We weren't anti-center at all. It just happens to be that she comes from Leelanau, which happens to be more rural, which has chosen to step up and meet the need for early childhood learning by supporting the home-based learning and centers. Am I correct in saying?
Yes, correct. But I think you are indeed correct because the center also has staffing issues, right? So,
absolutely.
So Mary, in the back, yes.
Yeah, I have a comment in the chat from
Yes.
Sharon Clooney.
Yes.
She said, if we don't make provider sustainability the focus, how do we expand the workforce and thence capacity expansion?
Right.
Provider sustainability is for home and center providers. Karen, have experience with growth, and both are difficult business models to support. So how do we have to have the diversity to support the differences?
I think Heidi brings up a really important point of, you know, oftentimes like the plan, when it is done in a regional context, has a really difficult time getting buy-in. And I think having the flexibility to acknowledge like the micro, which is not micro because it's dealing with families like on the ground. And, you know, if we're kind of trying to get to like a North Star, making sure that we can like test that with different, you know, what communities look like. And really honoring and respecting that local information and decision-making structure so that it relates, but is not like dictative towards local community.
Okay, excellent point. All right, I want to circle back to what Woody shared when he was talking about the convergence, and he outlined what it could look like, and he was presenting it as a question to the group, and we needed a little bit of clarity on it. Do you remember how you presented that, Woody? Would you be willing to do that again for the group?
Oh, sure. I was just, you know, all I was doing was riffing on what was already going on, you know, where it was like, yeah, I think these action pathways there are many of them that could positively impact our system. And it's not as if we're leaving them all behind, right? But it was a moment of recognition that the things that are at the top of this list really could reinforce each other into a single approach that could be helpful to the system if done in a way that's flexible to meet local needs across our region.
And hang on just a second. So I just want to ask, in group, what does that feel like when you hear what he say that? So what's your gut?
Allison, you were nodding your head.
Yes.
And I don't know that it's exactly what you're talking about, but I do, just, it's very encouraging that they do kind of support each other. And then I was going on to, in my own head, what that would actually look like.
Okay, and so if I'm hearing clearly, like, you're hearing the benefit of the support positive, and that's like, man, can that really happen? Like, there's a tension there. And that means we're wrestling on the edge of where we want to be.
So what would an action step look like for supporting all these number ones?
Okay, so you're driving towards where we need to get if we're going to do something with this, otherwise.
Talk tonight if you're not gonna do anything.
I actually have a question for Allison. Allison, you told us a little bit about when you lived in Washington, right? That there was a provider network. Did that look something like this?
I don't remember, I was looking to start a home day here to stay home with my children, and so I've probably found them in the yellow pages, frankly, at the time. It was more, because they did training for, getting licensed, all those things that you had to do for that, and I had a mentor. So that was ongoing meetings to, it's a really isolated business, so supporting providers that way too. So that was really helpful. But I do like the idea that there would be a training that the center staff and home providers are based in child development and are really trained well. Not just opening up your house to have a group of 6 kids there that, then what do you do with them? But learning more about that child development piece is so important. So a centralized training offering that, it's a low paying thing, so that potentially paid training and paid time to do that learning. Supporting parents too, that are interested in, these co-opting options for parents too.
Good. Heidi, you were gonna say something.
Well, I want to address, I think what it was that Karen said online, is I think there's a tension here that this business model, which is my contention, this is not my, I come to this with not 20 some years of education. So, but there is a tension that the business model doesn't work. So I think you have to be able to fix that, because a provider can't go into business charging $25 a day because that's all the consumer can pay, right? So I think with all this, we still have to address that systems change of how do you fix that business model so that you can get a provider, right? We're addressing that in Leelanau County, so when we get a provider, we say you have to charge this rate because you have to have a livable wage, so we worked it backwards. And then we're going to incorporate, the tri-share model of getting that support between the family, the businesses, and the community, and have that work. But I still say there's this tension of the business model doesn't work. I agree with Karen.
Yeah.
At a center level and a provider level. Yeah. And we gotta fix that.
Yes, and it's, we're here because it's not easy, straightforward.
All right.
So thanks for sharing, and forgive me, I don't know your name.
It's Clara.
Clara.
And she's probably regretting getting me here.
Oh my God, that's like cheering back here.
Clara's driving us for clarity on action, right?
Clarity,
Little drum, snare drum thing with that, right? And it shows the way your mind works, is saying, how are we going to act on this? And that's been a big part of what we as the adjacency have looked at with this, is how can we get this disparate group to the point where there is something that we can move forward on and that is actionable, that we can do. It can't be, and I'm going to use the example, when they ask the questions like, how do you eat an elephant? What's the answer? one bite at a time, right? It's identifying, so what are the bites that we can take? Because we got an elephant that we have to eat here. We are converging on the clarity for what that is. We've got examples, Heidi's given an example of, and Patricia, with what you're doing in Leelanau that has aligned with what's come out of here collectively today. Can we, as a group, identify what this group can move forward on collectively to start eating that elephant? If I just share that question with you and say, is there that one thing that allows us to start to eat the elephant? Is there something that stands out? We don't have to have the solution. I'm trying to stimulate thought. Yes.
I was just on that note, Steve, we talked about funding and our talk is intersecting with others. Would you mind just saying a few words about maybe we put together a fund because you can't get grants for for-profit businesses? The idea of a fund is an immediate step. Could you just speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, the idea was that it started with the question of, are there funds, from United Way, the Community Foundation, et cetera, that can give money to people who are starting up businesses? And generally the answer is no, there's not. We can only grant it to other nonprofits. That said, if there was a centralized fund that some sort of body held, they can do whatever they want. And they can do that. And now I don't want to sort of get into the IFS world here, but there's also the possibility, as I understand it, of the difference between loans and grants. And so there are lots of levels of financial partnership that could be created that could then pull together. The other idea was that and we've spent a lot of time talking about Benson County because we have a number of representatives there, is that if the goal is that in the next year we need 10 more providers, period, then one of the things we might have to do is to say, the model is going to be, we're going to have to collect some money from charity, from financial lending partners, et cetera, and from the community at large, just to get those 10 up and running. And we need to stabilize the patient, and then once we get to that point, then we can talk about how we want to design the system and what equity looks like and how much would be available for each provider. But right now, there's just not that luxury. And I'm sitting next to somebody from Crystal Mountain, so yeah, somebody will come knock on your door too. But but how do you create that fund that is in a central place that can give money to direct providers where that is a limitation of being at least a community foundation?
Yes.
For me, what really stands out is I feel like we have one, and these two sort of tie together, but something that starts like not trickle. No, that's not the word I want to use. A big key thing is getting non-parents to care about the crisis that we have, because if you don't have non-parents involved with what we're trying to do, we're going to be continuing to fight uphill, because you need people to provide the funding and the resources to help launch. So those people that have the funding and the resources don't have kids, they don't care. You create pathways for parents and students and workers to get subsidized. Well, you can maybe get non-parents to care about. You want good workers, you start training them early. You want connected hubs in schools. Again, there's a huge part of our population that has children and care because we're grandparents, we're families, right? But there's also people that are not parents. The cranky people downtown that don't have any kids and can't stand when the Blue Angels get here because they make too much noise. Well, how do you get them to care? But that's important. Sorry, I just happened random thoughts. But if you don't, you have to get the people that aren't here in this conversation, aren't at the table to help us spread the awareness in the community. The community hears and knows about it. Oh yeah, that's a fun deal. But help them understand what they can do to help us.
Okay.
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. If the end goal is you want to do something like Leelanau County, you want a village, I get that, but I'll tell you the money's there already. The funds are there. You really don't need to go to the public and fundraise. It's there now. It's how do you access those how do you stack capital? That's what we need to know. I mean, the federal government through American Rescue Plan Act is given out $3 trillion to federal, state, local entities. Plus with existing programs already in place run by MEDC, local grant loan programs, community development block grants, the funding is there. You know, I don't think you need to go out fundraise through the, yes, you need to fundraise, but
I'm not talking about just fundraising, I'm talking about, you know, philosophical, emotional, you know, like having, it takes a village to cheerlead. You don't have a football game without people in the stands.
I get that. What I'm saying is that it's the one in the middle there.
Which sheet, guide me over.
The build overall system support, number one, get non-parents to care. Yeah, I agree it's important, but I don't see it connected to funding resources and doing some of the other ones we've identified. It's important, but I don't think it's necessary. The funding isn't dependent on that public support.
So Jonathan, we have one more thing to do.
Yes, we
So
do.
I'm gonna say, in response to your question, that I think that this discussion points out both what we, yeah, sure, you can pass those out. Yeah, we were driving towards singularity, and for a moment, we had a vision, right? Like, oh, it can all come together, but then, you know, we were reminded of the realities of it is a complex system. And there are multiple things that do need to happen for these things to be successful. So even if we're moving forward on one thing, the reality creeps in of like, what's the funding model? And there are multiple answers to the funding model. Maybe it's all about, you know, getting ARPA money. Maybe it's about doing, you know, community-based support. Maybe it's about, you know, grants. And that's not a question we need to resolve today or that we will resolve today. And there's also the reality of, you know, how do we make it big? How do we make it small? And I think that we can resolve all of that going forward. But there was a moment when it felt like, yeah, we're converging on some things that feel like they're really going to make a difference and that can work together to enhance system capacity.
Chris, we got like 12 minutes left, but please share what you have.
I'll just say one thing very quickly. So we work across 10 states through the Midwest on this work, right? Those places that find success are not the ones that sit around and talk about the perfect answer. It's those that move on something, right? And so I guess I would just encourage that.
Okay.
All right, so again, near perfect segue from Chris. So, you know, because the reality is that we have a process that, you know, as we pointed out at the beginning, people have come in, people have come out, people are here for the first time. There are people that are not even here who we know we need to be involved for us to be successful on this work. And that's always going to be the way it is. But we do have agency. It's not as if we need to wait till we get the perfect group of people sitting together to make things happen. So whether you are a parent or a provider, or you work for an organization that has resources and a track record, you know, you may have recognized something that you feel like you can do in this process. And so this is not going to be limited only to the people who are participating in this right now. This is something we're going to be really trying to you know, bring in many who have expressed real interest and support for our work. But we're here now. So you've got a piece of paper in front of you to write down, you know, based on everything that you've heard and listened to and engaged in today, where you feel like you personally want to do something. And maybe the answer is I don't have the time or the will, like this was the most I could do, is coming here today. And that's okay. But if you do have something, we don't want to miss that opportunity. So fill out a piece of paper, and then we're going to ask you to, again, you know, talk to an elbow partner and answer a couple of questions. So just take a minute or two, and then we'll be wrapping up soon.
I want to take a picture. Yeah.
when you finished, and somebody near you is also finished, feel free to go ahead and take those questions at the bottom and just discuss them.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Send it to me.
All right, we are close to wrapping up our. So I wanted to see if anybody wanted to share something that their partner just shared with them that they thought was really worth sharing. And if the answer is no, we can move on to our close, but did anybody hear something from their partner about what they were excited about, or a really important question that we should all hear before we close that you felt like should be shared with the rest of the room? Okay.
I had one thing. We didn't actively talk about it, so under my breath just now, but I'm excited as a parent to hear about workers being trained and being supported. I know even at the daycare where my daughter is, like, we've already had a good handful that have transitioned to other places because, as we mentioned somewhere in there, it's not necessarily sustainable to be an early education care learner person. So it's exciting to think about having resources in place, not that we don't have them, but to have them in place and have them accessible. Because so many people think about how many diseases you are sick, but it's not because you don't have the resources, it's because you can't access them.
That's great. Thanks, Clara. Okay, so we are at our close. I believe Seth is going to say something, and then Patricia, and then we will be out of here on time.
And I'm gonna be short. I'm just gonna say thank you, thank you, thank you. This was a lot of time commitment. There was, a lot of you that were here all 3 sessions. So thank you. We are also ending at a moment that I don't like to end this at, right? Which is that we're ending at a moment being like, now what? And that is what I'm also excited about, is that we took the time and the due diligence to say, hey, what do we need to do moving forward? If a lot of you know me fairly well, which is I've been sitting on my hands for the last 3 minutes, not wanting to constantly jump up and say, yes, let's do that right now. How do we do that? Let's implement, let's go. Now we can start to have that excitement and that energy to put this into practice. And I'm excited as a co-lead for the Great Start Collaborative to be, how do we bring the GSC into this? At United Way, we're the new contract holder for the Resource Center as well too. So how can we bring what the Great Start to Quality Resource Center is doing? And then what can we do from United Way's seat to come in and help support this moving forward? And so as much as all of us are kind of, okay, what's next? What's next? It's coming. And I will promise you that there will be this next step. There will be action. There will be things that will be getting done. You just have to stay tuned. So with that, Patricia, I get to turn over.
Is this okay, or do you want me up there?
Stand and be wherever you want to be.
I'll stand up there. Okay. Well, I love Seth because he is an action man, and it is now, and that's what we all want to do. I think today it's been such a privilege to be involved with this. We're on the
Over right in front of there, and then the virtual.
on the verge of really accomplishing, which many of us have been involved with for many years. I wanted to just share a thought with you, and that is what seems impossible many times is really possible. We can do this. In 2019, a group of 42 people in Leelanau County looked at what was the status of early childhood, and some of those folks are in this room, and said, what are the things that are working? What are the things that are not? And decided that there was a program that fit, which is parenting communities, and to go for funding for that, for a millage. And when the campaign was created, people said, don't do this. You'll never get it through. There are too many people. 40% of our group is over the age of 60. It won't happen. The farming communities will never support it. But the campaign pushed on and pushed for, we're not telling you how to vote. We want to tell you about this so that you can make an informed choice when you walk into that voting booth. And it passed by 99 votes. That was really an exhilarating moment. People who had worked in the field for a long time were crying with joy, literally. And then about 3 weeks ago,
after we thought this wonderful thing had finally happened, we had a little, what do you want to call it? Rip in the system, a little bubble. And that bubble was the commission that had supported it in 2019 no longer was in existence. That was in 2019 a bipartisan vote, but it was 4-3. So 3 weeks ago, we had another vote that was 4-3, but it was partisan. And essentially, that vote was to set the millage at 0, which really would have eliminated the program altogether. The community that came out before came out again. We had the benefit of our non-parents in 2019, and they all came out again. The childhood community came out again. Young parents who have been benefiting from this program came out again. Experts, and thank you so much, Mary and Woody, for coming and spending time and providing information. And based on all of this, it allowed this 4-3 vote to turn to 7-0 to support the program. So what I'm really saying is the impossible is possible when we come together and we find a path forward that works and supports our community. And I think we have a fantastic beginning here today. And I hope that we can move forward and really implement what's up here, because this is a solution that'll work. So thank you for letting me have the privilege of being here working with you. And I'm just excited, as Seth said, to see what we can produce together.
That's it.
It's noon, yes.
Take your sheets as you're walking up.
And one more important action step is the tape. We need all of those notes on your way out. The goal is to have none left.
The last of the schedule. Now.